So when starting your portrait, after you have your palette constructed, either using the skin tone system I showed you or other skin tone systems that you may have read about. One popular one is the Zorn skin tone palette. I'll talk about that in another video. But that tends to be a very specific case of use. So I feel like this other system has a wider array of possibility to it. Anyway, so the first thing you want to do when you're attempting to do a portrait is establish your sense of structure, right? And I know I told you to avoid line making whenever you can in previous videos, but in a portrait, when you're trying to create a likeness of something, I find it is helpful to go ahead and start with a series of quasi line work to at least set your intention down where it needs to be, and set so you know where you're not trying to establish multiple things in one step. You're trying to establish color, light, scheme, and likeness all at once. So doing it this way is kind of easier in some ways because it helps you establish likeness first, and then you can kind of go on to other steps. Personally, that works for me. It doesn't work for other artists, but that's okay. So I didn't actually figure a portrait to work on before I started this video, so I'm actually just going to go ahead and arbitrarily pick one out of my stack here. If I could find one that has a face on it anyway. A face, I'm looking for a face. Any face, some face. Okay, here we go. So this is a face, right? This is my cute little girl. So I'm going to go ahead and try and do this portrait just to start with on this canvas, just so you can see how I would begin it. And I'm going to put it, where did I put this? Where it doesn't get too dirty. I don't have a copy of this. I don't want to get too messed up. I'll just hold it, okay? Alright, so to start with, I'm going to decide where I want the top of her head to be. I don't want it centered. I feel like centered compositions are sort of dead compositions, and you have to, after you have a centered composition, your painting has to be really nice because the composition will be dead. Alright, so I'm going to start with, okay, this is where the top of her head the top of her head to be, and I'm going to have it a little off center, like I said. And then top of her head, and then I'm going to go ahead and set where eyeballs would be. Bridge over the nose. Bridge of the nose. I'm going to go with this little nose, kid nose, a very tiny little noses. Right? And there's not a sense, this is a very light picture, right? So that you don't have a huge, heavy sense of dark on anything. So you don't want to, so your building of darks is going to be relatively minimal, right? So right now I definitely feel like the nose is too big, but I don't care. This is just the beginning stages, right? I mean, you shouldn't be bashing the beginning stages too hard. Let's see, so the side of her face kind of comes around this way. Some more liquid on my brush here. Okay. So the side of her head comes that way. I want to make sure that I have this tilt. That's going to be really important in portrait making, right? Where you can decide, well, I have the line of the eyebrows right, or the line of the nose right. All the mouth, the nose, the eyebrows, the hairline, they should all be on that same level. And that's how you're going to be able to determine whether or not the head is tilted. And a tilt in the head, to me, is an important, useful thing in to keep in mind in portraiture, because that sets a tone whether the head is tilted or just forward looking, right? I think most of you kind of know that too, your own sense of portraiture. So, and then the mouth is going to be kind of over here. Let's see, and then the ear is going to be up here. Little bitty neck. Shoulder kind of comes out this way. So, and what I really want you to understand in painting anything is you can paint anything if you're paying enough attention to what it is you're painting. So many students in class, they just end up sort of trying to paint without really observing what they're painting. They're just going on images they have preset in their minds, and those images are often arbitrary at best, childish at best, maybe just bad. Okay? So I mean, when you really look at something and change your mind about what it really looks like, then that's when your painting will really start to evolve very quickly toward a more mature sense of copying, like portraits or even landscapes, when you really can learn to use your eyeballs to see what it is you're actually trying to paint. And then, so there's a very dark area here, but like I say, there's not really a lot of darks in this photograph, right? It's a very washed, kind of a little bit washed out, very highlighted, right? And that's okay. Still cute, right? All right, so let's see. So I think that's all I want to do with the very small brush right now, okay? So there's not a great likeness right now. That is not to come. That is not for you at this point in your painting. Right now, what you're trying to do is make something that you can correct. You will have to correct it. What you do initially, what you do to start with, is going to be flawed. It is 100% guaranteed going to be flawed. The idea is you cannot adjust something that doesn't exist. Once you have something, once you have brought something into existence, then that is when you start to correct it. So I'm not going to bother with background this time because I feel like you already know background stuff. Normally at this stage I'd go into the background and kind of jiggle with that for a little while, but we're not going to bother with that because you already know from previous videos and what you're already doing in class how to do that. So we're going to jump right over to skin tone. So I've already made a little palette of skin tones on my, a little spectrum of skin tones on my palette as before. So I'm just going to go right into that. Once again, I am starting with the dark colors in the skin, even though there's not a lot of dark in here still, but that's okay. Those are still the ones that I'm going for. Let's see, gotta kind of pick them out, but not very many here. And then of course the darks in the hair. And as you can see, I misjudged. Now that I kind of am progressing here, I can see that I misjudged where the top of the head would be going. And so her ponytail is going to be kind of coming off the edge here, but that's okay. So we have this hair. Let's see. I have hair. And then we're going to go into a little bit darker still. I'm actually just going to add a little bit of black to my darkest skin tone that I made. Could have added blue as well. I'm not sure it really would have necessarily greatly mattered which one I chose to add. And then I'm going to go here. I don't know, I think that's kind of the most I'm going to get out of this dark area. Alright, so that I think I'm satisfied with. I'm going to go over to the next lightest tone that I made in my palette. So the next, well, the darker tones, but still pretty light. And then I'm just going to go ahead and build this forward. Starting to look kind of interesting, right? I don't know if you can see the likeness kind of starting to come through just a little bit. I have a lot of adjustments to still make, and that's okay. I'm going to add a little bit of a yellowish skin tone because the light wash on this photograph is there, making it yellow, but also she has just a little bit of a kind of a Latino look to her, so I know that she does have those more goldy tones that I'm just going to go ahead and put in because I know they're there and I can see them in the photograph. Look how big and careless these strokes look, right? they look kind of like a little startling maybe, right? I can see that. As a beginning painter looking at this at a portrait that you're working on can be a little startling, right? But building something at first can look a little messy. And it will look messy until you get to the last 20% of your workload. And I think even though 20% doesn't seem like very much, that last 20% you put into your work results in the remaining 90% of the overall feeling of the painting. So don't be discouraged if your portrait doesn't necessarily look like somebody like what you want it to look like right away. Until you get to that last 20, maybe even 10% of your painting. The devil is in the details, I know that, but those last remaining details are really what pops a portrait. So just keep that in mind as you're going along here. Don't get too frustrated. I'm going to add some highlights in here. There's definitely a highlight up here. There's a highlight on her cute little cheek. Along the eye line. Alright, so this part where you don't necessarily have to stress so much about it is where even something like portrait painting can be fun. Where you're just putting paint down, this thinned out, watery, nice paint, just putting it down and seeing where it goes. The mouth is always, for me, in portrait painting, the mouth is always the hardest. There's lots of reasons why, but we don't need to talk about that right now. You'll see as this progresses why my mouths typically have trouble. Hopefully this video doesn't end up too long, because I don't want it to be very long, but at the same time, I want to get done what I need to get done while it's wet, because that is when most of your, that's when you can really make most of the progress, is when something is wet. So anyway, well, I feel like her nose is too long. I have a habit of doing that too. That's something I've noticed about my own work, so I'm going to go ahead and raise that up a little bit. And then I'm going to lighten out this purpled eyeball. Is it purpled eyeball? No purpled eyeballs. Alright. Now it starts to look interesting, right? Let's see. What else should I do here? This video is already kind of over 10 minutes, so... Alright, so... I'm going to throw in some pretty dark darks where else they're needed. The really dark darks are up here, in the hair. Here. Those really dark darks are happening. Freaking beat there on there. It's supposed to be running out or something. Some dark darks. Dark darks. Yeah, some dark darks here. See, I think that her shoulder line comes up a little farther. Some dark darks there. Her chin goes down. The shirt goes in. Okay, well this video has gone on quite long enough, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of cut it off, but just so you can kind of see the beginning. It doesn't necessarily look like her yet, right? That's okay, that's not what I'm going for right now. I'm just trying to make something that I can make a series of adjustments to. And yeah, so there.